Hey everyone, it's Lance with Christianity Minute. Last time we studied together, we started to see the Pharisees had begun to show their opposition to Jesus. Jesus tells this parable of the wineskins to illustrate why the new ideas that he's telling are so difficult for them to grasp in their understanding of the law of Moses. But they're not going to get it, of course. I did get some feedback as to why the Pharisees are suddenly against Jesus. The Gospel of Luke really doesn't tell us, but the Gospel of John tells us that Jesus has been to Jerusalem and created really quite a stir, having already cleansed the temple. He drove out animals with a whip and flipped over tables. We'll study that more in depth when we get to the Gospel of John. Needless to say, the priests really weren't a fan of Jesus after that. But combine that with the fact that he threatened their place of power, well, they're going to question everything that they can from here on out. All right, well, today we'll continue down the same line how the Pharisees are questioning every move that he makes. And they must be following him around with the entourage of people following Jesus at this time, because the events we see from today's reading. Luke chapter 6, verses 1 through 5. On a Sabbath, while he was going through the grain fields, his disciples plucked and ate some heads of grain, rubbing them in their hands. But some of the Pharisees said, "Why are you doing what's not lawful to do on the Sabbath?" And Jesus answered them, "Have you not read that what David did when he was hungry? He and those who were with him, how he entered the house of God and took and ate the bread of the presence, which is not lawful for any but the priests to eat, and also gave it to those who were with him. And he said to them, 'The Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath.'" Okay, so this is only the start of the Sabbath controversy that's about to happen. The second half will be much more severe in the eyes of the priests, but Jesus starts out with a pretty bold claim. Based on a study of the harmony of the Gospels, we can know that this is not long after the Passover, after his baptism. About 2 years from his crucifixion, and knowing that timeline, we can have a pretty good idea that the grain that they're eating, it's probably barley, which is an early harvest, so roughly around April. We also know that it's a Saturday, the Sabbath. Some texts even include that it's the second Sabbath of the month. Well, the disciples are hungry as they're going along. Where are they going? I don't know. I'm not sure where they're going. Probably to listen to Jesus more or something. But they go by this field of grain. And they pluck off the heads and they rub it with their hands to get the edible bits out and eat them. Think of how you might eat a sunflower seed. The outside, it's inedible. So you either, smash it or you bite it open, the outer husk, to get to the good stuff inside. The crops on the outer edges of the fields were available for anyone to eat according to Leviticus 23:22. But is it work? That's what the Pharisees are asking in verse 2. Exodus 20, verses 9 through 11 says that you're to do no work on the Sabbath. Well, isn't it work to smash these things with your hands to get at them? This does beg a question, whether these priests would question the work that it takes to prepare a meal for a family. But that's not our focus just yet. They were trying to catch Jesus in more violation of the law of Moses. And with the traditions they had put in place that were not part of the law of Moses, well, it kind of made sense to them. Unfortunately for them, that's not what the law of Moses was all about. Jesus points out that some work is necessary, and he cites 1 Samuel 21, 1 through 6. In this text, Jonathan had just said a heartfelt goodbye to his dear friend, David, after warning him that his father, Saul, was intent on killing him. Now, I don't think that this is anything new to David, since Saul had already tried to kill him recently. But David starts to head away, and he gets to the priest. David is in real need at this time. He's fleeing for his life. It had already been told to him by Samuel that he was to be appointed king, Well, he needs food. And the only food in the place is the holy bread, the bread of the presence. David accepts this bread, even though it's supposed to be for the priests alone. The priest also understands that there is a need. God does make exceptions in the case of the law for certain circumstances. David's case is, of course, kind of an extreme example of need. I really like this part of David's story, by the way. This is a side note, because he's fleeing for his life and he needs a weapon. And the only weapon available to him is the one stored in the temple, the sword of Goliath, of all things, who David had killed years ago. So that's kind of an interesting little tidbit. It's cool how God kind of arranged that. Now, the disciples were not in need, of course, like David was. But in order to eat, it's necessary to do some work. Is the work unlawful? No, because it's necessary. I kind of gave away my point a little while ago. What would the priest say to a woman maybe fixing supper for her family? That's really a lot of work, even with today's modern conveniences. They were just being nitpicky at this point and will continue to be further down the line. And then we come to verse 5. This is the stinger. Jesus makes another claim of being God, saying that he's the Lord of the Sabbath. Jesus had a hand in writing the laws of the Sabbath, being God. And quite frankly, who were they to nitpick? Well, the priests aren't going to give up. They're going to continue to hound Jesus on this same issue on another Sabbath when Jesus heals a man with a withered hand, which we'll talk about next time. I know my upload schedule has become a little erratic due to taking on some more responsibilities at church and in life, which are demanding of my time. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Feel free to share any part of this video, and if you'd like to donate, there are links in the description. If you'd like to keep learning more, check out some of my other videos on the screen. And I'll see you next time right here on Christianity Minute.